Look at him. Oh, hi, big fella. Look at him. So, welcome back, guys. We're doing another one of our little Croc Talk podcasts. And a question I get asked all the time we're going to cover is, what do you do if you get bit by an alligator? Well, you probably die. That's probably what you're going to do. But I do want to break that down and really go into some greater detail on that and what really, like, why would they bite you? What happens? What are you supposed to do? And all this kind of stuff, right? So let me just kind of preface all of this with the idea that everything I'm about to tell you is all, let's say, hypothetical, and that you should never find yourself in this situation in the first place. The best way to handle an alligator bite is to not get bit by an alligator in the first place, right? That's the smartest thing you can do. Do not enter alligator habitat. Do not try to interact with wild crocodilians of any kind. Stay out of their habitat, all that kind of good stuff. You know, we've talked about this ad nauseum before, but the best thing you can do is prevention, safety. Do not end up in this situation in the first place. And just to kind of cover me as well, I'm going to give you hypothetical answers that I think might be the best thing to do. They may or may not be helpful, and don't bet your life on it, is what I'm trying to say. If you're gonna purposefully put yourself in a bad situation, be like, I'll survive because I'm gonna do what Chris said. No, you're probably gonna die. I'm gonna tell you things that I think are good things to do, and what I would do, I don't know. I've never had to utilize any of these things. He's never bit me. Everybody's always asking that too. No, he's never bit me. And, you know, I'm going to tell you some things that I would do if he did that I think would work, but I've never had to use them. So again, we are talking hypotheticals here. This is not your insurance plan. This is not meant to be your backup plan or anything like that, you know? So what do they say? Like, this is not my, I'm not giving medical or life-saving advice here. We're just going to talk about this topic in hypotheticals, and in no way am I responsible for what happens to you, okay? I got to cover myself on all those bases, right? So anyways, back to the actual root of the issue here. What would I do in this hypothetical situation? So it's really all going to depend on why is the alligator biting, right? And if you're like, well, because they're an alligator, right? That's just what they do. They bite. Oh, there he goes underwater. No, that's not exactly how this works. So these guys are intelligent, complex animals, and if they are going to try to do something, there's a reason that they're going to do it. So like right now, he just went underwater. And right now, if he were to reach out to try to bite me, it's because he's underwater. His eyes are either closed or he has his nictitating membrane up. And in that case, right now, he's relying on his tactile function more than anything. That's the sense of touch. And so right there, he might think that he feels some movement that he thinks might be food. And that makes him much more likely to reach out and try to bite it without looking at it or knowing what it is first. So this would fall under a feeding response. That's not necessarily an attack. That's that feeding response. And that's why, like, under the water, he's a lot more dangerous, actually, because he's not really looking. Casper, come. Here, we'll give him a little treat anyways, just because I want him up, and, well, for safety and just for the sake of the video, I want him up, so I'm going to call him over here. Got a little tiny piece of a Gator Child biscuit right here. This is ground up chicken, fish, and beef. Come. And we'll just give him one of these. Oh, you totally didn't notice. There it is. Okay. So yeah, give him that little tiny piece back there. No, that doesn't make him full or anything like that. It's just kind of keeps him interested and up. But anyways, though, it comes back to motivation, okay? They don't just bite. If he's gonna bite, there's a reason why he's gonna bite. And this usually falls into a couple different categories. As best as I understand them, there's probably more. You know, I learn new stuff all the time. So again, this is all hypothetical things. I learn new things about alligators all the time. And so these are as I understand them. Maybe I'm gonna look back at this video, you know, 6 months, couple years, whatever, and be like, oh, that's totally wrong. I need to rethink that whole thing. But as I understand them right now, let's run through this, right? So the most common reasons why an alligator tries to bite. So number one, in my world, and working with these guys hands-on, these are the things that come up. Number one, there's feeding response, there's defensive behavior, there's predatory behavior, and there's territorial behavior. Okay, so those are the main ones that I encounter in my work that I have to worry about. There could be more complex, more differing reasons or motivations for one of them to bite, but those are the main ones that I have to deal with. And as I classify them currently. Again, maybe we'll explore new stuff at a different time. But all right, so if we were to try to break that down, so feeding response, number one, this is the most common reason why somebody gets bitten by an alligator, either a wild or a captive alligator, because feeding response is where the animal has been fed by people, associates people with food, and then they just think everything around them is food, and they go to bite like just about anything. You'll see in a lot of my videos, you'll see him biting on leaves. That's feeding response. He's not hunting leaves. You know, he knows that I feed him, and he knows when I'm around he can get food, so he just kind of nibbles on everything, and they'll bite just about anything. And that's where it can be a feeding response. Now, he knows leaves aren't food, but he's like, well, let me check this thing, you know? And so if that's your hand, he's gonna grab it, and he's gonna be like, oh wait, that does feel like food. And then he's gonna latch on. He's probably not gonna let go. So feeding response is the most common way that people do get bit, whether it's a captive alligator people are working with, different zookeepers and trainers and whatnot, or in the wild sense, a lot of times wild alligators are fed by people and they're associating people with food. Don't feed wild alligators, that's illegal. And it does end up with people getting hurt a lot. He just went underwater again. So again, when he's underwater, I really got to watch him. And to really pay attention a lot more because he's going on that tactile sense more. But anyway, so with that feeding response, like watch right here, if he kind of snapped, barely underwater. There it is, that's a little bit better. So that's me moving water and stimulating his, watch where he's going right now. See him underwater right there. But yeah, so when I move the water like that underwater, he feels the integumentary sensory organs are activated by that movement, and that makes him like, you know, try to feel around for it. And again, his eyes are closed right now, feeling around underwater, hoping to find food. This is feeding response behavior right now. It's not hunting me, it's feeding response. He's like, you know, something to eat over here. I know this guy feeds me, maybe he dropped something down there. So that's what he's trying to do. Sorry, I'm all over the place because I gotta pay attention to him at the same time as I'm trying to do the video too, right? So that feeding response, you know, that's where they're thinking about food, that's what's on the brain, and they just kind of randomly grab different stuff, hoping it to be the food that they are being fed. And that is very different from predatory. That he's not necessarily hunting in that moment, he's feeling around, hoping for like a handout, hoping for free food. Now, gears can change from one motivation to the next very quickly. Predatory behavior can evolve out of the feeding response or defensive or whatever, you know, things change. Dynamic environment, they're animals that are intelligent and they're going to change their motivation depending upon the situation that is going on. Okay, so just to clarify, it can change. But back to the feeding response. So what happens if you get bit by an alligator during a feeding response behavior? Now, typically what they're going to do is they're going to grab onto that thing. And now, again, he's never bit me, but I'm going to talk about what I've done when he's got things he's not supposed to have, or other alligators I work with have got things they're not supposed to have. Thankfully, I've never had to test this with an actual body part, but I'm pretty sure this will work with an actual body part if you had to, because I've done it several times with other things they're not supposed to have, where like a tourist throws a water bottle in the enclosure and they go and grab it, or a cardboard box. I've had that happen too. I've had various things like trash below in the enclosure and the gator gets it and you got to get it out of his mouth. So when he grabs it like that, that's a feeding response because he thinks that might be food. It came from a person, and then they go and they grab it. And so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that thing, like a water bottle or cardboard or whatever. And so like if he's right there and he has that thing, I grab it, but I don't pull away. I offer no resistance at all because he isn't trying to kill it. He is in the feeding response mode, so he's not trying to fight it or kill it. He's like, okay, I got the thing. And he just kind of crushes it and like, is this food or not? And he's trying to figure it out. Now, if that's your hand, you have to just sit there and take it. And you can't, if you immediately pull away, you're not going to be able to pull out of his mouth. It's 2,000 PSI crushing force. It's not like you're going to make it out. So you'd have to sit there, let him grab you, let him crush you, and just wait. And then if you don't offer resistance, and because this is feeding response behavior, he's then going to try to manipulate it in his mouth and throw it around to feel for it and see if it is food or not, or he's going to throw it back to swallow it. And so when he goes to throw it back, either for whatever motivation right there, he goes to throw it back, you pull it right out of his mouth. I've done that multiple times. Again, water bottle, cardboard box, piece of plastic, whatever. I've done this multiple times with multiple alligators. They got something they're not supposed to have. I just hold on to it, offer no resistance. He goes to throw it back to swallow or manipulate, yank it right out of his mouth. So theoretically, you could do that with your hand too, you know, or whatever he might have. So that does work. All right. And again, I've done that several times. Now, why don't you want to offer resistance, even though it's a feeding response bite, is because as soon as you do, his motivation goes to competition because he knows you're holding it. He's aware of that, you know? So if you're not just holding it limply and you're offering any resistance at all, he's going to tear it away. And he might just take off to run, or he might go right into a death roll to take it away from you because he's like, you're not taking my thing from me. So he might go in that death roll, or he might just take off with it and try to swim away with it. So again, that's why you don't want to offer any resistance whatsoever in that kind of a scenario. And then you're not going to be able to take it out of his mouth again. Like, he's not going to let go. And you also, like, a lot of people think if he's got, like, if he bits you, oh, you're going to hit him, he's going to let go. That's not going to work in that situation either, okay? That's one I do like to make very clear. We're going to get to that. That's a response if it's predatory. You should fight for your life, okay? And I'll explain why when I get to the predatory part. But in the feeding response part, if you hit him, he's probably not going to let go, and he's not going to care. And this also applies to defensive behavior too. If you go to hit him in that kind of a scenario as well, he's not going to let go. And in a predatory response, they will let go because a lot of times you can scare them in that. I'm gonna save that for when we get to that section, right? But just in this section, just understand that will not work most likely. Like 99% sure it won't work. So yeah, not gonna do that one. Okay, so next motivation would be defensive behavior. Okay, so this is when we're trying to catch a wild alligator and he thinks that we're a predator trying to kill him, so he's trying to fight for his life. And this, in my opinion, is the worst way to get bit. Okay, this is the absolute worst way to get yourself nailed, is if it's defensive. Because in that situation, he thinks you're trying to kill him and he's going to fight for his life. And because he thinks he's gonna die, you know, and that's the worst situation you can be in, because he's not going to give up, because he thinks it's life or death, you know. And so when we're trying to catch an alligator, this is the biggest thing that we're worried about right there. Is you get nailed during that, it is not gonna be pretty. And thankfully, you know, again, never had that happen to me. I've had a few friends I've had that happen to, and not good. Okay, so let's run through this. Again, his motivation, fighting for his life, kill you before he kills him. That's basically what's going through the alligator's mind in that moment, right? So what they will often do in that situation is clamp, bite with everything he's got, and immediately go for the death roll. Now, remember, in that feeding response, he's only going to death roll if he feels like he needs to. If he feels like you're offering some sort of resistance, you're competition for him, or he needs to separate the food he has from the rest of the body part, like the rest of you, I mean. So like if he's got your hand in feeding response, he may be motivated to death roll if you offer resistance and he feels like you are competition, or if he's trying to roll off that piece to be able to swallow down. So that can happen with the feeding response, and it will be definitely heightened in a more competitive nature. So if there's multiple animals around, it's much more likely for them to roll more quickly. So yeah, more animals around makes that more dangerous. But anyway, so back to defensive though, worst way to get bit, right? So they clamp and they immediately go to roll, and this is to inflict maximum damage as soon as possible to save the alligator's life from his perspective, because from his perspective, he's about to die, so he needs to kill you as quickly as possible, no questions asked. So they will immediately clamp, go to roll. So if let's just say, like, if this video is being watched by anybody who does work with these animals professionally, I always try to recommend people to, try to have a backup partner with you. Says the guy that's completely alone and does most of his videos completely alone. Don't do what I'm doing. Today I'm alone. Oftentimes I do have George with me. He's often my camera guy, but in here I am all by myself. This is not a good thing to be doing. I'm doing it, whatever, but yeah, I do it all the time. Don't do it. It's not a good idea. Like if I got grabbed right now, I have nobody to help me. Not a good situation to be in. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Have backup, right? So let's explain this as if you did have backup. So if you did have backup and you got hit with the feeding response, nobody do anything, go limp, wait and just walk around with the alligator. He's got your hand, walk around with him and wait for him to feel comfortable enough that he wants to manipulate or throw back to swallow, yank it out. Now, if he was going to go to roll and you did offer too much resistance, or for whatever reason he decides to go for the roll, your backup needs to immediately jump on the back of the alligator and prevent the roll. And this will hopefully minimize the amount of visceral damage you're going to suffer, and hopefully he doesn't remove the body part that he has a hold of, right? So now, you don't want your backup to jump too early though, because you might be able to just walk with him and wait for him to release and go to manipulate or swallow, and you pull out, and then you just have a couple puncture marks and you're pretty much fine. But if your backup jumps early and then you would have had this chance, but now you don't because now somebody jumped on his back, then he is going to start shaking and thrashing, and you're going to really increase the likelihood of more damage to the body part, although more likelihood to save the body part, because your backup will prevent him from being able to roll if they know what they're doing. So that's a hard decision to make. That's why I'm like, well, it's going to depend on what's going on, and this is a moment by moment kind of call. Like, when I have George with me, I've explained all this to him already, and he already knows that, and like I've told him, like, if I ever got grabbed, you have to do what I say when I say, and because I'm going to read the situation and know what to do and when to do it. And it gets really complicated, and there's many different ways it can go. As you can tell in this conversation already, I'm kind of all over the place. I'm usually a little bit more focused in how I'm presenting this, but as I'm going along, I'm realizing, but this, but that, and that, it's hard, it's complicated, and it's extremely dangerous. Obviously, you want to make sure you get it right. You don't get a second chance, So yeah, I should have started this with the backup in mind, but continuing forward, we'll talk about it with backup in mind, and then what you would do if you were alone too. So, but yeah, so if you got bit in the defensive and you have your backup needs to immediately jump on the alligator, no hesitation. If it's feeding response, you do want to hesitate for a second, because you might be able to get out of it without having him shake or roll, and that's the best case scenario. But there is no scenario like that for the defensive bite. He's going to roll, so your backup needs to get on that alligator ASAP, okay? Again, the feeding response, it's a judgment call. If it looks to you like he might, if he's already thinking about rolling as soon as he bites, because sometimes they do. If you have multiple alligators in the enclosure, sometimes they will grab and immediately go for the roll because they want to get their food piece before another gator takes it from them. So in that situation, if you have multiple gators, maybe you do want to immediately jump on them to save your friend's hand, because you already know it's a competitive environment and he's more likely to go for that roll on his own. Meanwhile, like if I got nailed by Casper right here, right now, he grabbed my hand, I would not want my backup to grab him immediately. Oh, also, again, I'm all over the place because I'm thinking about this as I go. Also, I'm in deep water right now. Well, relatively deep water, but like there's a big difference in what you would do if you were in deeper water or what you would do if you were on land, okay? So that makes a difference too. Like in here with Casper in the water like this, you can't dive on him, and it would make things way worse to grab on him. So in here, I would absolutely want to try to go limp and wait for him to try to throw back or something like that, And we will get to, in a minute, we're going to get to what do you do if you jump on him, and then where do we go from here, right? So, but anyways, back to, I know I'm all over the place. I apologize. There's so many different things to go through here. But back to the defensive one, you got grabbed. Your backup should immediately jump on him, prevent the death roll, hopefully save your body parts right there, okay? And again, defensive bites, that's not where you want to be, dude. That is the suboptimal position or motivation that you have to deal with right there. You don't want to end up in that. What if you were alone and you got bit in that defensive? Man, you're probably going to lose the body part. I mean, that it is what it is, especially if it's a decent sized animal. If it's a smaller animal, maybe you can manhandle it. Maybe you can it's almost always the hand that gets bit, most likely. If you did get your hand, you can try to dive onto the back of him somehow and get onto the back. Or even if you come, he's got you like this, you could wrap your legs around and try to control and move with him a little bit to some extent, so that when he rolls, it doesn't just rip your arm right off. It's a really bad situation. Again, at this point, guys, it's what is it, triage, Again, I'm trying to give you things that might save your life, but in the grand scheme of this, you are most likely not making it out of that without losing something or without some major damage, okay? But let's say defensive bite, he's got you. Your friend dove on the back, prevented the death roll. What do we do now? How do we get this thing off? So this is where I was talking about, where if like you were to try to hit them and fight them to make them let you go, does not work here. I know guys that have been a bit defensive like this. I know guys have like got nailed and they are punching the gator in their head, in the gator's head. Gator does not flinch. You cannot physically hurt that animal with your bare hands. You are not going to be able to hurt them. Oh, but Chris, I've seen news stories where a little girl got bit by an alligator and she hit it in the nose and they let go because her noses are so sensitive. And no, that's not real. That is uneducated people making an interpretation of a situation they do not understand. What happens is that is a predatory motivation, and the protocol for a predatory is totally different than for a defensive or for feeding response. I'm going to get to the predatory, but just so you know, fighting back might work predatory. It will not work defensive, okay? And it pretty positive, most of the 90% of the time won't work for the feeding response either. So defensive, he's got you. You're not going to be able to fight him. You can't hurt him. I know guys that have been bit like that. They take a gun out and shoot the gator in the head. Doesn't even flinch. Still fully clamped. Unless you ruptured the part of his brain that controls the jaw muscles, it's not letting go. You know, so I know guys that have shot him. I know guys that started, one dude got bit and they started cutting the jaw muscle with a knife, and the gator still wasn't like letting go until they cut through the muscle to release the jaw muscle. Like, really bad situation, you know, guys like stab him with a knife in the side, doesn't flinch, doesn't react to the pain. Their pain tolerance is through the roof. If you saw my other video talking about this, like, yeah, gators get their arms ripped off in fights and they don't even flinch. So you're not hurting it as a human with your bare hands, or even with a tool. Sometimes they don't let go. And again, because he's fighting for his life, this is defensive. So he's not going to respond to any level of pain that you cause. Either you have to cause the muscles to cease working, or the brain to cease working to be able to get him to let go in that kind of situation. And here Casper just came up. I wasn't showing him the whole time because he was underwater, but he just came popped right back up. So yeah, let's say your buddy got bit, you're on his back. How do we get him to let go now? I know some people have used like a Jaws of Life thing they use for cars. I've heard of that working. You know, it's got that, enough to pry a car apart. So, you know, a large gator can bite down with that 2,000 pounds per square inch of power. So Jaws of Life can generally go greater than that. So you can pry it open with the Jaws of Life if you happen to already had that with you. But the best thing that I say, and this applies to all different motivations, if a gator is clamped onto you, you cannot get it to let go. How do we get it to let go? If you can flood them. And flooding is, as far as I know, I don't want to like make a claim, but as far as I know, it's kind of like a technique that I kind of pioneered here, where you open the glottis underwater and allow water to flow in. And I didn't like, maybe, I don't know. I don't want to like make a claim here that's not true, but as far as I know, I kind of came up with that. Or at least in this technique of if you're on land, you can bring a hose over, you could pop it with a stick and spray a hose down the throat, and that's flooding them, and so that'll get water inside. The gator is drowning at that point and will have to release or drown, and so that is very effective. Now that's not nice to the alligator, obviously, but it is a life or death situation. It is what it is. So so you could flood them. If you're in the water like I am right now, you would have a stick and flood them for that. Or if you're on land, you would have either like a water bottle, or pressurized water is even better, or a hose or something like that. I want to make a device that has a pressurized water. Basically, I want to do a fire extinguisher, but just water, and have pressurized water with the hose out with a little stick at the end, so you can actually pry into the glottis, pop it open, and spray water. If anybody in here is watching this is an engineer, help me make one of those. Definitely will save some lives. I want to do that. Niche market though. But anyways, so flooding them is a technique that I've kind of come up with that is extremely effective as your last resort, and the best way to get one to release. And again, it's kind of awkward because like it's one of those things where like I've told people my idea and then other people talk about it, and then it's like, oh, that's just a thing that people do, and I'm like, pretty sure I came up with that, but whatever. I don't want to claim it. Maybe somebody else did before I did and I wasn't aware of it, but as far as I'm aware of, I pretty much kind of came up with that idea, and it's super effective. I mean, if the other people I was talking about before already knew of that idea, why were they shooting them in the head and trying to stab them with knives? If you knew, you don't have to do any of that. You just have to get water down through the glottis, and then you're good. So whatever. Not to kind of get in the weeds there about who came up with that. Well, whatever. Pretty sure this guy did. But yeah, so let's say he's got your buddy, you're on the back. Then you guys want to have you get a small stick or whatever, a piece of metal, whatever, and you get it into the gap that is formed by the person's arm being bit. So there's a gap in there. Pop that glottis down, shoot some water down there, and then the gator will start to drown. Again, that's not nice to the alligator, but it's going to be able to save the person or the limb. Will the gator die from that? Eventually, yes, it would die, but they're going to let go and they're going to shake. And then if you stop right there, again, that's not going to be fun for that alligator, but it will survive that. They deal with this kind of stuff in the wild, and I've seen it happen. And yeah, they survive it, so it's not like it's going to kill the alligator in the long run, as long as you stop doing it as soon as the alligator let go. So flooding them works great, super effective. Trying to pry the jaws open, sometimes it works, depends on the size of the alligator. For smaller gators it works. If you had a 10-foot alligator, there's no chance you're prying it open with just human strength. Not happening. If it's like a 6 or 7-foot alligator, people have done that and pried it open, and that's worked. It depends on the size of the gator and how strong it is, and how strong the people are too, of course, and what tool you're using to pry it open too. So sometimes that can work, sometimes it doesn't. So either way though, defensive behavior, not the situation you want to find yourself in, okay? And then territorial behavior is another motivational category that we can go over. I have very, very, very rarely seen them be motivationally or territorially motivated against a human. That doesn't usually happen. They usually are only territorial against other alligators, not against a human being. Since we're not an alligator, they don't normally see us that way. It has very rarely happened, and I don't know of anyone actually getting bit with that motivation in mind. Assume what I just said. I would assume it would end up being a bite and a shake, and then let you go, because I've seen that's what they do to each other, and that's more of like a get out of my space. So they're trying to get you to go away. So they would hit, shake, and then release on their own. Okay, I've never seen them clamp usually for that, or go immediately into a death roll for that. They will, of course, death roll, like if they get in a fight with another alligator, one of them goes territorial, bites, starts to shake, the other one turns and bites him, then they're both going to start rolling, and then that can become a fight for your life in that situation. But generally, bite, shake, release is where the territorial kind of thing lies, okay? So I would imagine that would be the same thing with a person. Don't want to find out. Don't know anybody that's found out, but like either way, I would assume if you had back up there, you would want to jump that gator as quick as possible to prevent the amount, try to slow the shake or whatever, because that's just doing a lot of damage right there on the person. Even if you didn't have somebody jump it, you probably won't lose the body part, because I think he's just going to shake and probably just break it, but you still get to keep the broken arm, hopefully, but there's a lot of maybes and hopefullys right there, so yeah, just be real careful in that one, and have your backup jump them immediately, and then proceed to, flood or pry or whatever you have available to be able to try to get them off you, right? So territorial one, I don't have a lot to say on that one, but that's kind of where my brain goes for that. And then predatory is the other really big one. So predatory is very, very different, and a predatory response for an alligator, and again, these are all alligator conversations. A lot of this stuff can apply to crocodiles to some degree, but crocs, it's going to vary on what species we're talking about and how big it is and all that kind of stuff. So that's a whole different, more complicated thing. This video is already super long, so maybe we can talk about that in a different one. But anyway, so alligator predatory behavior. Alligators typically like to hunt small animals, raccoons, turtles, fish, birds. An adult human is not on the menu for alligators 99.9% of the time. If they actually wanted to eat people, there's over 1 million gators in the state of Florida. If they really want to eat people, you'd have people dying every single day in the state of Florida. So they really do not see us as prey. They don't typically hunt an adult person ever, almost, okay? So real active predatory hunting of a person, of an adult person, almost never happens unless you're swimming, and that's a situation where they are seeing what they perceive to be a small animal. Check out my past video talking about this in greater detail, but if you're a swimmer like this, and then he only sees this is a small animal, they will come after and grab that. And this is why when it is a predatory motivation, it's also usually curiosity, curious about the prey, not like, oh, is this a friend? No, it's curious, like, oh, is this something I can eat? And so they're coming over with this curiosity to be predatory. And in that situation, if you fight back, a lot of times they will release because they are, again, curious, they're investigating, and as soon as you fight back, they realize, whoa, this thing's way bigger than I thought it was, because they think that they only see this. They're perceiving a small animal as a swimmer, they come in for that. Yeah, fight back, they realize you're much bigger than they thought you were, and they release. And so this is why when you hear stories of like the 8-year-old girl that had a gator in the nose and it let go of her, and people are like, oh my God, the nose is so sensitive. No, the gator thought that she's a lot smaller than she is because she's in the water, and it thought maybe I can take her, you know, and then she fights back and the gator's like, oh, that thing's bigger than I thought, and it lets go and it backs off. So that's why fighting back can actually work in that situation. And I talked about this a lot when I was talking about like what to do if an alligator attacks you in the water. And, you know, so go back to that video. I go in a lot of detail on that, and, you know, like about that motivation and about fighting back, and they release because of that. Not because you're hurting it, but because you're basically scaring it and making it realize that, you know, you're bigger than it thought the prey, the potential prey was. And so they release you on that, right? So that's why you can fight back and often get an alligator that is under the predatory motivation to actually release you, and you can survive that way. Now, the problem is, what if he's not afraid of you? What if he is a gigantic alligator that knows what you are and is not afraid of you? So that is very rare to have that happen, by the way. This will take a very big gator. Most gators, you know, like an average size is like 7 to 9 feet as far as an adult average size that people often encounter. This varies greatly by where you are and, you know, that kind of a thing. But a 7 to like 9 foot alligator, if you fought back, it's a pretty good chance he's going to let go, you know, because again, he's perceiving you to be a small animal. If you're a swimmer in the water, obviously don't get in the water with alligators like I am right now. Don't do that. You know, that saves you right there. But let's say it's a really big gator. Let's say it's a 12, 13 foot alligator, and that thing's coming over. And then that's a situation where if you did fight back, he ain't scared of you. You know, that's where like he can see you as actual prey because of that size. And this is a real bad situation that you're in. So like, I only know of one situation. I talked to a guy, and he was swimming, and like a 12, 13 foot gator came at him, and he'd seen some of our videos, and he knew the trick where you can push the gator away. I talk about that in one of my past videos. You can go check it out. So he tried to push the gator away, came right back at him again. He pushed it away again, came at him again. Normally it just takes one push. I've done that with wild alligators. They've come at me in the water, one push, and then he like realizes I'm way bigger and stronger than he thought I was, because again, I was swimming, and he just sees your head and he thinks that this is a small animal he can eat. So he comes after that as perceived small prey. One push and he realized, oh, I'm a lot bigger than he thought I was, and they back off, you know, just from that one push. I've done that before in the wild multiple times. Really big one though, came at this dude, pushed, came at him again, pushed, came at him again, went to push again. He slipped on his push, grabbed his arm, snapped his arm right off. Just immediately. And again, that is a large predatory animal. Really bad situation to be in. That's worse than the defensive, honestly, because he wants to eat you, you know, and that's really, really bad. So that guy got his arm ripped right off, gator swallowed it, and then he swam to shore with one arm. And once he got up on land, then he was good and he survived amazingly, you know, swimming with one arm like that. So that's really cool, and he did make it. But yeah, so in that predatory sense, fight back the best that you can. Try to push it back. If it did grab you, you know, because the whole point of this video is what do you do if it did grab you? If it did grab you with that predatory response, fight for your life. If you can flood it, try to. If most likely this is where your backup would probably not even get to you before the gator goes to roll. That's what makes this really bad. Like when I'm out diving in the wild, and I'm diving, me and George are out in the wild looking around, there's wild alligators we don't know, and we're filming. We try to stay very close together, very close, and that way if somebody got grabbed, the other person can hopefully jump onto that gator and try to flood them as quick as possible, so they can't go in the roll. And so but really it's probably going to happen so fast your backup's not going to be able to get to you. So I would just be prepared. I mean, I am mentally prepared that let's say I'm swimming along and one gator grabbed this arm, I'm going to grab on and bear hug onto the gator with his his jaws around this arm, bear hug onto it. It starts to roll. I'm gonna roll with it, and then I'm gonna have my other hand, and with the gap caused by my arm in its mouth, I'm gonna reach in with the other hand and pull that gloss down to flood him. That's my train of thought in that situation. Thankfully, I've never had to do that, obviously, but that is my preparedness plan in that kind of a situation. That's what I'm expecting to have that play out, and that's what I'm going to try to do, you know. Well, I mean, obviously the first thing you do, like, let's say bam, you know, he just got you right there, turn, hit him, hopefully he lets go, because again, he's investigating what he thinks is a small animal. Again, reference the older video I talked about with that. Hit him, and then if it didn't immediately let go, I'm going to lock up onto the alligator, and then we're going to be death rolling in the water, and it's going to be pure chaos, and I'm going to try to flood him as quick as I can, and if I don't, I'm going to die, because he's also going to death roll you underwater, and you're going to drown very quickly. So what should your backup do if they are with you and this chaos is happening? Try to get your friend's head above the water to be able to breathe, and you know, it's absolute chaos. It's going to be death rolling in the water. The water is going to be all murked up and bubbly, and you can't see anything. It just, dude, horrible nightmare situation. So if you could try to flood the gator, and then also try to get your friend's head above the water to be able to breathe the best that you can. So like I was handling a wild alligator years ago for this. It's a whole story. It's a whole different video to talk about. But I was a 9 foot, what was he, 9'8" or 9'10", so almost a 10-foot alligator, over 250 pounds, and I'm locked up on him, and his jaws are like this, trying to bite me the whole time. And you know, thankfully, obviously, it didn't bite me, but like I'm locked up on him, and we're death rolling underwater, and this thing's trying. It's a completely wild alligator trying to kill me, trying to grab onto my head, and I almost drowned. I mean, that was like one that everybody's always, what's your closest call? If you've made it this far in the video, you've earned it, okay? I don't like to go into these stories because it just embellishes the danger, and I don't like to sensationalize the danger. I don't like to paint these things as monsters, and people take it out of context, and they're like, oh my God, look at this gnarly story. And I you know, like, I know that's what people like to hear. I don't like to go into those because it's not true to the animals. I've been in here for an hour talking with the Casper. It's not like he's tried to attack me once. So like, I don't like to go into these stories because people take it out of context and they sensationalize, and then they just, it's cheap drama entertainment, and that's not what I'm about. I'm about education and conservation, and that's what I want to be known as. I don't want to be known as like, oh my God, this guy's got the craziest stories of almost dying. And I do. I've got those stories. But like, that's not how I want to be known. If I was in this job for attention, that's all I'd talk about. And I would be all over everything just for attention for that. I'm not in it for the attention. I'm in this because I want to educate people about animals and appreciate these animals and help people conserve these animals, right? So you made it this far though. Yeah, so I had that gator underwater, death rolling, trying to rip my head off. The jaws are coming up like this, and I've got him around like this, and just ka-bah, 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 trying to bite me in the head, and I almost drowned on that one. I mean, I was drowning. I was sucking in water, and I'm like legitimately drowning, and like my whole world like slowed down, like slow motion, as like I'm drowning. I'm pretty much dying, you know. And it's either drown or let the gator bite you in the head. And I would like pop up, and as soon as I popped up out of the water, get my head up, the gator jaws would come up like this and just boom, boom, and the jaws would hit like this across here. And if you got the angle right, they can't actually close on your head, and that's what I was doing. And so I had the right angle right there, and just boom, and just insane. And eventually I was rolling with that gator long enough that I tired him out. And then it was right at that point that I'm literally drowning and dying, and he just hit his exhaustion point. And then I popped up, and his head's like right here against, like jaws like this against mine. And I mean, top of his jaws here, bottom of his jaws here, you know, and I'm just like, Dresinilia again. It was so gnarly. One of my coolest stories that like I'm only sharing because if you've been in this video for this long, you get to hear it, okay? But yeah, that's one of my crazier ones right there. Super gnarly. But yeah, so your fear is that you're gonna drown in there too, even if it didn't bite you and you're just holding on, which is where I was. Your fear is that you're gonna drown, you know. Or again, to come back, circle back to what this video is about, is if you were grabbed, try to get where you can breathe, you know, because even if you lose your arm, hopefully you don't bleed out from the arm loss. What am I trying to say? It is more important to get air than to minimize blood loss, is where I'm going with that. Because let's say you lost your arm, you could then maybe tourniquet, you could maybe grab the artery, and then be able to stop blood loss and survive that way. But if enough water gets in your lungs, you're not surviving either way, you know? Or maybe if you have a buddy, they can do, you know, they can do some CPR on you and get you out of the water. That's assuming they can, you know? So again, there's many different variations and variability to this right there, but there's a whole lot going on, very complicated. This is the longest video I've done on this channel so far, but it's a lot of interesting stuff, you know, and I could keep going on this, but I think we'll cut this one out right here just because I've been going so long, and this video is going to take like 10 hours for me to upload anyways. So, but yeah, so we went through most of the motivations right there, most of what you can do maybe, but if you saw my other video talking about like what do you do if an alligator is about to get you, I said a million times in that video, you're probably gonna die, you're probably gonna die, you're probably gonna die. Same thing here. If you got grabbed on this, these are just techniques that are, I've never had to use any of those, thank God, but these are techniques that may or may not help, but bottom line is you're probably gonna lose a body part or you might lose your life. Don't end up in that situation in the first place. Be smart, be careful. Don't do what I do, you know, all that kind of fun stuff, because these are all super dangerous situations that you probably will lose a body part or lose your life at. So this video is intended to help professionals in this field who already work with these animals professionally. This video is not a tutorial for some Yahoo to be like, now I know what to do and I'm gonna go dive in the Everglades. No, don't, absolutely not. You know, this is to hopefully be able to help somebody get through this situation later. Okay, and I'm going off experiences of friends that I know that have been nailed, and I know they've been bitten or lost an arm or something like that, and what they did, and you know what I've seen and what I've done when I have a gator that gets something they're not supposed to have. So yeah, there's just there's so many different avenues, and this situation is so complicated. But hopefully you guys learned a lot from this, and you know. Again, I can literally keep going on this. I have other anecdotes and stories, but already this is a super long video, so I'll go ahead and cut this one here. Let me know what you thought in the comments. As always, like, subscribe, share, and I hope you guys learned a lot from this video. Just be careful out there, and again, don't take this as like, now I know what to do and I can make poor decisions because I'll be safe. No. All the things I just said, again, you'll probably lose your arm or your life, even if you do everything I just said. This is very, very dangerous stuff. Okay, so everybody be careful out there, and you know, don't try anything you've seen me doing, all right?